sliding beneath the surface of polite society. The foundation of their reality cracked, and through that fissure poured the psychic residue of a decade-old tragedy. Ben, the 10-year-old boy, was the first to notice the discrepancies. Children are receptive antennae, tuned to frequencies adults have long since shielded themselves against. He stopped complaining about the cold spots in the master bedroom. Instead, he began to seek them out. He would sit cross-legged on the floor in the corner of the nursery, the room Mom had insisted on converting into a guest room, and whisper to the shadows. "What do you want?" he asked one afternoon, his voice small but steady. The shadows did not answer with words. They answered with sensations. A feeling of profound loneliness washed over him, so intense it felt like drowning. Then a picture formed in his mind. Not a visual image, but an emotional impression. The scent of antiseptic mixed with cheap lavender perfume, the rough texture of a wool blanket against skin that felt neither warm nor cold, and the crushing weight of being unwanted. Ben rubbed his temples. "That hurts," he murmured. "What hurts, honey?" Clara called from downstairs. "Nothing, Mom, just thinking." Meanwhile, Clara busied herself with blueprints and contractors. She hired a local crew to fix the leaky roof and reinforce the sagging porch. Yet every time she interacted with the workers, she felt a strange detachment. She was polite, efficient, but her eyes seemed to focus on something just beyond their shoulders. Her hands, when she handled the old fixtures she planned to salvage, trembled slightly. She recognized the grain of the wood in the attic beams. She had dreamed of it. She recognized the pattern of the wallpaper border in the hallway, a faded floral print that gave her a sensation of claustrophobia. She had seen it in a recurring nightmare. The most significant change, however, was in the baby Leo. Leo was a happy, gurgling infant, but as the days turned into weeks, his behavior became uncanny. He never cried for no reason. He would stare at the blank walls of the living room for hours, not with the vacant gaze of an infant, but with a look of intense, analytical scrutiny. He would giggle, a sound like wind chimes, at seemingly nothing, and when the adults turned to look, they would find a book that had been on a high shelf for decades now lying open on the floor, or a window that had been latched now standing ajar, letting in a cold, damp breeze. Clara's rational mind attributed it to drafts and the power of suggestion, but a part of her, a deep, ancient part she had buried since childhood, knew the truth. The house was not empty, it was occupied, and the occupant was not a malevolent demon as the town legend suggested. It was a poltergeist, yes, but a poltergeist with a name, a history, and a specific, unquenchable desire. The entity, the specter of Scarlet, was not a monster. She was a wound, and wounds bled. Chapter 8: The Return of the Father. The first major storm of the season hit on a Tuesday. The wind howled like a pack of wolves, and the rain lashed against the windows with the fury of 1,000 needles. The power flickered and died, plunging the house into the warm, orange glow of oil lamps. It was on this night that Robert, the father, returned. He had not been seen in the town of Blackwood Falls for a decade. He had vanished from his job, his family, and the public record. Rumor had it he'd run off with a younger woman, a nurse he'd met in the hospital where he worked, but the truth was far more mundane and far more terrible. He had not run, he had been running. For 10 years, he and Claire had lived a peripatetic existence, moving from one dilapidated rental to another, from one false name to the next. They had the baby, the new Noah. He was a real boy, a healthy, beautiful child with Claire's dark eyes and a shock of unruly black hair. They called him Eli. Eli was a good child, too good. He never threw tantrums, he never asked for things. He was obedient to a fault, a quiet, watchful little boy who seemed to be constantly measuring the emotional temperature of a room before he dared to speak. He had a collection of imaginary friends, which Claire initially found endearing, but the names of these friends were always variations of the same theme: the sad girl, the quiet boy, the one under the floor. The new Noah was a success. The procedure, whatever dark alchemy Claire had performed, had worked. The